Before we even get to the paradoxes, let's start by establishing our parameters. I will be talking about the God of the Bible as he is described in the Bible. We're talking about an all-knowing, all-powerful God. Okay, now that the board is all set up, let's start by moving the pieces around and see what we get. Could God make a square circle? This is what I would call a paradox by definition. Two options that are defined as being mutually exclusive. Something is either one or the other, possibly neither, but by its definition it can never be both at the same time. A straight curve, a four-sided triangle, a married bachelor. These are paradoxes by definition. So, could God do it? Well, in one sense we could certainly say yes. Because words only have the meanings that we give them, we could define square and circle to mean the same thing. Or else God could alter our understanding of the words to the same effect. So yeah, that's technically one answer to the puzzle, but it's not really what we're talking about. It's just wordplay. It's like saying jumbo shrimp is a paradox. We're talking about a square as in a two-dimensional quadrilateral where all sides are of equal length and where all angles are 90 degrees. And we're talking about a circle, a two-dimensional shape that is a closed plane curve where all points are equidistant from the central point, a conventional square and circle. So naturally these two shapes cannot be the same thing by definition, and according to the laws of our universe, such as the highly applicable law of non-contradiction, these two cannot ever be the same thing. So we might be tempted to say that no, God cannot make a square circle, and we then might conclude that since there is something that God cannot do, he is not truly all-powerful and thus not truly God in the biblical sense. But this would leave out a couple of important considerations. If God created this reality, could he not also create a separate reality in which the laws of that reality allow for a square circle? I don't really see any reason why he couldn't, but this is highly speculative and I expect that it wouldn't satisfy many of you. Luckily, I have an example that's more applicable to our universe, and that example would be the universe. Just all of it. It exists. God created everything out of nothing. He basically spoke it into existence. We have an entire universe of examples where God appears to have violated at least one of the laws of the universe, the conservation of mass and energy, by creating something out of nothing. But let's get even more specific. In Matthew 14, Jesus feeds a large crowd of people by miraculously multiplying a limited number of fishes and loaves. Once again, he appears to violate the law of conservation of mass and energy by increasing the mass of the food. I'm going to assume that some of you object to my referencing miracles in explaining this paradox. Maybe you believe that miracles are unreasonable or impossible, or maybe you just don't believe the Bible, and that's okay, we can disagree. But remember that we were trying to determine if the God of the Bible, as described in the Bible, could make a square circle. If we rule out God from the beginning, there's no reason to even ask the question. Of course, an imaginary God can't make a square circle. An imaginary God can't make a circular circle. We never read in the Bible of a specific instance where God makes a square circle. But the miracles in the Bible give us numerous examples of God's power. Enough to conclude that the creation of a square circle should be well within God's capabilities, even if it's outside of our capabilities to fully comprehend. But maybe that answer doesn't really satisfy you either. You're not going to get thrown off track by a lot of hypothetical speculation. I can respect that. So what if I told you that God wouldn't have to create a pocket universe or invoke reality-altering miracles? What if I told you that we really aren't as clever as we think, and that most paradoxes about God aren't really paradoxes, but rather are limitations of our ability to perceive and comprehend reality? You would probably tell me that was a run-on sentence, and you would be correct, but that's not relevant to our topic. Let me get to the point. I made a square circle, and no, I'm not claiming to be God. Forgive the crudeness of my model, think of it more as a proof of concept than a final product. This is a three-dimensional shape to me as I hold it, but you're watching this on a two-dimensional video, From your vantage point, I have one shape that is both a circle and a square, albeit with a little change of vantage point. No doubt I have objectors out there, or I would if anyone watched this video. Nonetheless, you're likely saying that this isn't really a square circle, and that I've gone outside the meaning of the paradox. But come on, what is the meaning of the paradox? Is it just to continue being impossible no matter what? We could make a square circle through alteration of the language, invocation of miracles, creation of pocket realities with different spatial relationships, and manipulation of the limitations of 2D video. That's 4 ways to get a square circle. And I guarantee you that if I sat down long enough, I could come up with a few more. And if I can make one square circle by being just a bit clever, how many different kinds of square circles could an all-knowing God create? But if the point of the paradox is just to say that you can't make a square circle and therefore can't have an all-powerful God, then you've just assumed the conclusion your question is trying to reach. Maybe what you really should be asking is, can God do the truly impossible? Is there anything God can't do? Or can God do the things that God can't do? Find out in my next video where we will ask, can God make a rock that's so big even he can't lift it? This is a 3-dimensional. This is a piece of paper. I can do this. I can do this. I can't do this. Did you push the middle? Ba-doop, ba-doop.